You're listening to Sexploration with Monika. And today, exciting local live theater, not only in Dolores Park, but all over the Bay Area with Marie Cartier. Thanks so much for coming on Sexploration with Monika.
Thanks, Monica, for having me. Happy to be here.
My pleasure. So tell us more about the shows coming up. I hear not only Dolores Park, but lots of other parks around the Bay Area, like where?
Well, this weekend, the 22nd and 23rd, we're going to be in Live Oak Park in Berkeley. We're also going to swing back to Berkeley later in the season, be at Willard Park in South Berkeley. We're going to be in Richmond. We're going to be in Santa Cruz and all over the city. So we'll be in Yerba Buena on the 29th. We'll be in Glen Park, Golden Gate Park. Yeah, which is a beautiful, beautiful place to do the show.
Yeah.
Also easy to pull the truck up right to where we have to unload, so that's always really
Awesome.
nice. And yeah, all over the Bay Area, Cotati as well. So yeah, coming to a park near you very
Sweet.
soon.
And tell me, so you guys are not silent mimes, because I did have a lot of people being like, how are you going to have a mime on the show?
Yep, that is the curse of our branding. The company started in 1959, and we have been asked that question for 60 plus years.
Yay! But not, I mean, that's the thing. You're speaking out about social justice.
Yeah, so we derive the meaning of mime from an older meaning, which means exaggeration of daily life in song and dance. So we actually, our style is based in like street theater styles like Commedia dell'arte, which is all about speaking truth to power, making fun of the elites,
Ooh, you're giving me chills.
rising up the common
That's
person.
right.
So that is what we mean when we mean mime. We do musicals, we've done radio plays, so we're definitely never silent.
Oh, yay. That makes me so happy. And tell me more about like what's going on in the like kind of deconstruct the narrative that you're telling, the story.
Yes, so the show this year is called Breakdown. Every year we try to take topics that are really relevant to the immediate
Facing
time.
us now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
facing us now. For a long time, we've addressed homelessness in a number of our shows because it is such a prevalent issue in San Francisco.
So huge.
But
But
this
all
year,
over the Bay Area.
yeah, and in every major city in America,
Yeah,
and even
Portland.
in rural areas, everywhere.
Yeah.
So this year we wanted to specifically take a mental health angle because we feel like in this post-pandemic world, it's just we've really seen such an uptick in people struggling with their mental health. So the idea behind this show was to look at mental health from a number of different levels. We have basically three main women characters. We have a woman who's experiencing homelessness, who's experiencing very severe mental health symptoms. Then we have her social worker, who's also just kind of our every woman character who the audience can relate to, who's still just struggling to get up day to day and do her job, and like many of us are struggling with these days. And then at the third level, we have a Fox News anchor woman who's kind of we see as responsible.
And this character is a woman.
Yes, she's a Black
Interesting.
woman.
Oh.
And so we see her as kind of in that role of gaslighting the whole country, and how so much misinformation and twisting of the truth really contributes to
that's
our
kind of Fox News's jam.
our
now.
collective mental health struggles.
Yeah.
And how that ties into just, our existential things we're all facing,
Well,
climate
and they
change
really,
and all that. Yeah.
Fox News comes after like trans rights all the time, and
Yeah.
so hard with so much things that are not true about trans issues.
Yeah, there's a lot of just punching down and just hysteria around trying to make the most vulnerable categories of people even more vulnerable. It's really pretty despicable. And in our show, she comes after San Francisco and the Tenderloin.
Right. So can you say a little bit more about the history of the Tenderloin that you intend to like elucidate?
Yeah, I think we're trying to show a different side of the Tenderloin that has been shown in most of our media. Like lately, it's always the, visible drug use and a very like grinding poverty that you see, but we wanted to show it also as a neighborhood and as a community, and also as a place with a radical history.
Yeah.
One of the most diverse neighborhoods in the city, one of the only affordable places left in the city, and how there is
Barely affordable.
Yeah, not even necessarily for everyone, but
Yeah.
how there's still a lot of community there, and how we need to defend it and preserve it.
Totally. And there's so much tasty food there. And it's right on the tender knob. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's
So
lots of performing arts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's so many good things still happening in the city.
Yes.
And I think, a lot of people move to Oakland and away from San Francisco. And I think, in some ways there's an opportunity to rebuild, some of the juicy culture and diversity, that's still left in San Francisco. But I just wonder, what the next phase of San Francisco will be. And it's so great that you guys are doing some theater here.
Yes. Well, we've been trying to hold it down for a long time and keep that like radical spirit alive, and that spirit of trying to
Queer inclusion.
Yeah. Yes, queer inclusion is a big part of the show, and a big part of the, reason Fox News comes after a place like San Francisco is because we have like prominent queer people in
legislators,
government, and we have like just actually a very powerful
trans
community
legislatures.
Here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's in terms of the next phase of San Francisco. I think a lot of it is about trying to preserve what we have, but also pick apart, like also hold our government, our local government accountable for what it's lacking and what it isn't providing for the most vulnerable people here, because they are our neighbors and they are part of the fabric of San Francisco.
Yeah, the homeless people are people too. Yeah. So we're going to play your trailer really quick. Paul, can you cue it up for me, please? Awesome. You're the best. Paul Brumbaugh from the Edge of Insanity.
Good
Edge
to be
Studio
here, guys. Yeah, thank you.
Online.com.
Yes, that's me. I am here, and it's good to listen to this because I'm a stand-up comedian, and so I always think of pantomime, right? And so it's kind of funny that you are breaking those social norms when it comes to that, right? Because I always think of pantomime as it being silent, and I'm like, okay, we're going to be on a radio podcast, but we're going to be silent? Wait, hold on. So I'm glad we're breaking those norms. That's great.
For sure.
And this breakdown is running through July 1st through September 4th, correct?
Yes.
That's right, through Labor Day weekend.
That's awesome. And look forward to this. And here we go, guys. Breakdown, a musical. Here we go.
You see me, I see you see me, but you walk on by. I just need a couple bucks.
It is a show about what San Francisco is going through, what every city is going through.
The mental health crisis.
Homelessness.
Finding our humanity in this moment.
My main character is Sadia. She is a social worker.
I'm playing Yume, living on the streets and trying to survive as best as she can.
But I want to live a life of service, and I don't know how to convince you to care.
The madness is a lack of compassion.
And oh no, I might be one of those people who walks past homeless people.
What is the point of a country if it doesn't care for those who are most in need?
And I think that compassion can lead to action.
The show is called Breakdown.
You will laugh, you will be deeply affected.
Don't miss it.
I see you, see me, look me in the eye.
Wow. And you do address a lot of issues just in the trailer. Can you say a little bit more about what people are going to see on perhaps in Dolores Park or around the Bay Area?
Yeah, I think one thing that we really tried to depict was we're not a company that does super naturalistic style theater, but we do want to show the truth. And we wanted to show, like, really have an emphasis on this character who's experiencing homelessness, because I think so often in plays and TV, there's like a homeless character who's kind of like played for laughs, or like their mental illness is part of the, like, is a joke and it's on the
Right.
side. But we wanted to really like follow this character more in depth to show kind of
humanity.
yeah, the humanity, and not only how people experiencing homelessness are treated and how they're trying to deal with like these broken systems and all these things, but also how people with long-standing mental illness like have to experience the world and see things from their perspective, which we so often don't think about and don't want to think about.
Yeah, well, I think it's just so hard to, I mean, just imagine. I mean, I think that's the worst thing that we can think of. Like, oh, I don't want to be homeless, and then being outside and just thinking about the different kinds of struggles of, not being housed. I mean, for many years, I traveled around because I couldn't afford rent in San Francisco, and I was a house sitter. But, for most people, it's really hard to make the rent. And then there's that, extreme commuting that we see going on socially. And, I just think that there's so many things that, we can think about, like, okay, what do we have? How can we see the abundance in our lives and be grateful, and then be able to share it with other people? So tell me more about the different characters. I know that you have, okay, so tell me more about the every woman character. Is that you? Is that your character?
Well, I am a full-time clinical social worker. So the social worker character, her experiences are like informed by my experiences. I wouldn't say she's me. I think I actually have a less toxic work environment than this character does, luckily.
Right.
But I think the point of her was, I think so often we have like an emphasis on the social worker character and like, oh, she's so good and like it's so hard for her. And we do see that part of it, but I think it's more important it's much harder for a social worker's clients, right? It's much harder to be the client than the
Just
social
the social
worker.
worker.
And so I think
That's
she's
an
kind of
interesting
our
point,
way in to see it. Like, she's a relatable young person. She's living with roommates who are kind of don't want to hear about her job, don't want to like engage in reality. One's a gamer, one's an influencer on Instagram. They're trying to find these other ways to kind of avoid like the gritty reality that we're all living in. And she doesn't have a choice but to see it and engage with it. And I think that kind of juxtaposition of her with her roommates kind of shows where we're all at, where we always have this choice every day to like engage with reality or to like avoid it. And a lot of us do like turn to social media or these various things to kind of numb ourselves and get away and escape. So what does it mean to choose not to do that?
Right. And you are born and raised in San Francisco, so you have seen, the rise and fall, rise and fall of a lot of the different, economic issues, the homelessness. I mean, you've seen a lot of it. What is your experience of the city?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Haight, so my whole life I remember seeing like the Haight Street kid type, like kids hanging out with their dog. They've come from another place and they're, maybe hanging out in the Panhandle or on
Bridge
the
and tunnel a little bit, those kids?
Well, I maybe not even, maybe fleeing some other location. I think, the Haight has always been a place for people who feel like they don't.
Refugees, in a way.
Yeah, refugees, I think is a better term. Like people who feel like they don't fit in and they want to get away and they want to come to a place that's accepting, and then
safe.
often they don't find that. Like
Right.
they have a very built up notion of what San Francisco is, and it's like very disillusioning and disappointing when they actually come here. That said, I think we are a city that's supposed to welcome outsiders and people who don't fit in.
And we are, in
Yeah.
a way,
Yeah.
welcoming of all that is freaky deaky, so that you can be your authentic self more than anywhere.
Yeah, I think socially, but maybe not economically.
Oh
is
my
the
God,
issue.
economically
Like,
is so hard here.
It's such a crapshoot. And
And whether or not your thing makes money, like as a social worker, do you make enough money? You know what I mean?
no, of
Right?
course not. I'm able to live. I have a comfortable enough life, but yeah, considering like how hard I work compared to someone doing some bullshit in an office, I don't know. You
Or,
know, I don't know if I'm fairly
Google.
compensated. Yeah. So I think so that was always a thing that was like prominent
Yeah.
in my
Like,
life
if you
growing
worked
up.
in tech, you'd
Yeah.
make a lot more money.
Yes, yes. And then in terms of sort of public health work, my mom is a physician. She's retired now, but she did her whole career in public health working at Laguna Honda, which is now like under threat of closing down and is often like the last resort for very vulnerable elders and people with various disabilities. And now we're like at risk of losing that. So it's definitely feels like, you know, since the tech boom and everything, people who were marginally kind of hanging on and were living indoors have been pushed out. And you see like it's clear to anyone that there is just a lot of visible drug use on the street. There's a lot of just like intense poverty. What I do think though is that a lot of people, you know, they'll walk through somewhere like Eddy Street and they'll be like, oh my God, this is so horrible. But if you actually really look around, there's a lot of people, they're just hanging out. They're just hanging out in front of their SRO. They're just living their life. And just because I think we have such a allergy to poverty in this country, you don't really, a lot of people don't learn to make a distinction between someone who's like really in distress and struggling and someone who's just a little rough but living their life, you know?
Right.
And I think working as a social worker and living here my whole life, and just I think the culture of San Francisco is one where you engage with lots of different people, you're open to different perspectives.
And
I'm
everybody's
grateful
in
to
such
that.
a transition, right, Marie? Because this city is kind of like that stepping stone up or down, or even just right here. We have so many things happening in San Francisco. It's really hard to stereotype any one segment of the population.
That's true. Yeah. And one of my favorite things to see is someone who's just like stable.
Right.
Like just they've got their room, they've got enough to eat, they're living their life, and like they're stable, and like that seems like it's sad that as a social worker, like that's what you hope for. It's just to have someone who's stable and living their life and they can just go day to day. But so many people aren't in that situation. Like every day is chaos and stress
and struggle and just trying to find that next meal or that next place to stay that's safe.
Right.
You're also not you're not a stranger to being in a radio studio.
No, we did a lot of home studio work during the pandemic, during the lockdown. We did our own series of radio plays.
Tell me a little bit about Tales from the Resistance radio
Yeah,
series.
Tales of the Resistance was what we decided to do when it became clear in 2020 and 2021 that we wouldn't
We're
be
never
able-
going to leave.
Yeah, that we were not going to be able to do summer shows.
Right.
And we just really didn't want to not spend our summer commenting on everything that was going on, because
Just to your friends. You
Yeah.
wanted to reach
Yeah,
a wider
I think-
audience.
I think some people use the Mime Troupe as a touchstone, and they like to see our perspective every year, and it's helpful for making sense of this crazy world, and to leave people without that would have been really sad. So yeah, we made a series of radio plays. The first summer I wrote the commercials. I made like satirical commercials. We're honestly pretty dark.
Well, because you're also kind of anti-capitalist.
Yes.
And, you
Yes.
know, going after like
Yeah, and there was, and in the summer of 2020, there were all those like Black Lives Matter protests after the killing of George Floyd.
Yeah.
And so we really wanted to address that, but also sort of just touch on all these, the sort of dystopian reality we were living in.
Yeah.
And then in 2022, we switched it up where we did several one-off shows, and I wrote a half-hour radio play called Hobos in Space. That was
Hobos in
And
Space.
I thought you were just gonna go over that. You
Yeah.
said 2022. I'm like, isn't that 2021? She's not gonna discuss hobos in space.
Yeah,
You got
so
it.
Hobos in Space was our working title, but at the end we were like, no, we're just going to call it that.
Just keep it.
Sort of a Star Trek style exploration of my interpretation of the homeless response system in San Francisco. There's sort of this evil computer that's determining who has value and who doesn't, and who's allowed to be assigned a room on this spaceship. It's sort of you get the sense it's a post-apocalyptic situation where there's a generation ship leaving Earth to find a new colony, and found a new colony. And then what happens when people start falling through the cracks in that situation, when the stakes are high in a very contained environment. So that was my response to what I was observing in a lot of the way we address, like how we assign housing and who we decide to house in the homeless response system in San Francisco.
Now, you're also the founding member of Bow and Arrow Circus Theater Collective, where you write, perform, and produce, and does a lot of technical direction. Tell me a little bit about Bow and Arrow.
Yeah, so Bow and Arrow is a company I founded with my sister, Marie Cartier, and our good friend, Bethlehem Hansen. We started together, I think in 2017. We were in a show together. I grew up doing circus classes. So did my sister. Bethlehem is an amazing pole dancer and aerialist. And we were noted, there's a lot of companies that do what they call circus theater, but it's either not that circusy or not that theatery. And we thought we could really make it's sort of what Bethlehem likes to say is we founded the company on accident. We were like, let's just try and do a show and see if we could make like any money doing it. So and Jeannie's idea was, let's do a Christmas show because those always sell. And I was like, oh, Christmas is so overplayed. Let's do a winter solstice show.
Exactly.
So I did all this, I went to the library and did all this research on winter solstice traditions and wrote a script, and that became Saturnalia, which we're remounting this year, which is really exciting.
Yay, that is exciting. Well, because, Christmas can kind of exclude anyone who's non-Christian.
Totally.
And there are so many people that are non-Christian. You've got Kwanzaa, you've got Hanukkah, there's so many religions.
And the cool thing about the winter solstice is it's just like an astronomical
event
thing that happens.
Yeah.
So many
for
cultures,
everyone.
Recognize it in different ways.
Yeah.
And then I think it was also just kind of interesting to go into our own heritage,
the pagans,
and pre-Christian stuff. But then it's also a sexy circus cabaret.
Yay!
With a sitcom vibe.
Yay! So the comedy's in there too.
And then since then we've expanded. Our big show that we've gotten to do is called Dark Side of the Circus, which is a Pink Floyd.
It's kind of Dark Side of the Moon.
Yes, it is the album Dark Side of the Moon, just plays straight through, but it's a circus show.
Love it.
And you just brought that to Mexico.
We did. We had an adventure going down to Mexicali, and we got to perform it in Mexico. We got to be on Mexican morning television.
Nice.
And it was a real adventure.
Yeah, it was.
You are actually officially an internationally touring company at
Yes,
this point.
we are.
That is awesome.
We are. It doesn't matter that the theater was 1 block south of the border. We went international.
Well, you were in Tijuana?
Mexicali, which is below Calexico. It's more
okay,
east.
but safer probably.
We were fine.
Okay,
there
good.
was one cop that had to be bribed one time.
Well, only
but-
one.
Yeah.
You really probably saved money there.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, thank you so much for coming on Sexploration with Monika. Let's make sure that we tell everyone how they can find you and and see the show.
And remember, the San Francisco Mime Troupe presents a new musical breakdown. That's right. It's running July 1st through September 4th, and it's in Dolores Park, correct?
It will be in Dolores Park on Labor Day, but will be in parks all over the Bay Area until then.
So how do we keep up with everything SFMT?
So you can go to sfmt.org. You can follow us on Instagram, SF Troopers. You can follow us on Facebook, San Francisco Mime Troupe. You can also follow Bow and Arrow on Instagram at Bow and Arrow Circus.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been so fun to chat with you, and I really love helping people open their minds and experience, theater, and especially in San Francisco, because it's so important to me. I love the city so much.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, really.
And thanks for letting me come along for the ride, folks. I enjoy this every time.
Paul
Monica,
Brumbaugh from
really
the Edge of Insanity, edgestudiosonline.com. And thank you so much for listening to Sexploration with Monika. Hi, you are listening to Sexploration with Monika, and today we are going to single-handedly, no, it takes all of us, it takes every one of us, in fact, to keep San Francisco sexy, keep it freaky, keep it alive. And we have Marie Cartier. Hey.
Hi.
Marie. So glad to have you on Sexploration with Monika.
So glad to be here.
And we're going to talk about theater, which is really my first love.
Isn't it? For all of us.
Exactly. And so it's really excited. You've got some shows coming up in Dolores Park. And my token straight guy today is Paul Brumbaugh. Thanks for being here, Paul.
Thank you for having me, ladies. I appreciate you.
And thanks for listening to Sexploration with Monika.